first?
I'm not sure.
All of us?
Yeah, right.
You'll know what to do.
Thank you, Betty.
Ready?
Ready? I think.
Hello and welcome to Words Carry Us, our ongoing series of live stream events featuring readings and interviews from Greenkill in Kingston, New York. Tonight we're delighted to have Dorothea Osborn and Scott Michael Ackerman, who along with Lynne Stone are featured in the current show at Greenkill through December 26th. Dorothea and Scott are here to discuss their work tonight. Unfortunately, Lynne was unable to join us this evening. I'm Betty MacDonald, writer and host of this ongoing series. Before we get to the interviews, I'd like to start off the evening by reading from this anthology, something I wrote. It's called Happily Ever After. As the ceremony draws to a close, the groom raises his foot and violently crushes a glass placed on the floor. Why did he do that? It's a wedding custom commemorating the destruction of the temple, my mother explains. If they were commemorating the destruction of the temple, how come the bride doesn't get to shatter a glass? How come she doesn't get to commemorate the destruction of the temple? What does the destruction of the temple have to do with getting married anyway? For the first time in my 7 years, I don't think my mother knows what she's talking about. She believes what she's saying, and I don't. What is a scary act doing in a wedding ceremony? Aren't weddings about love? The sinking feeling in my gut tells me this practice exists to demonstrate the groom's domination over his bride. Cousin Reese's new husband looked mean as he brought his foot down on the glass, obviously to demonstrate what a man he was. Besides my fear of violence, I'm frightened by the sight of anyone, especially a grown-up, deliberately breaking anything. It seemed like everybody was supposed to get married. They were certainly worried about Risa at 26 when she was still single. They breathed a sigh of relief when she finally hooked a GI about to be discharged following the Second World War. Marriage looked like a bad deal to me. I made up my mind this was not going to happen to me. I vowed to never get married. 15 years later, I'm a bridesmaid in antique pink silk when my brother marries a doctor's daughter in a lavish affair in a famous Chicago hotel. As the newly wedded couple proceed up the aisle after taking their vows, a rainbow is strategically projected upon them, and a pair of doves are released. At the elegant reception, my father, in a tux, standing next to the champagne fountain, offers a toast and announces to the assembled wedding guests it's his strongly held, albeit drunken, opinion that my brother is making a terrible mistake and should be marrying our cousin Donna. She's a guest at the wedding, and she is mortified, as is my brother, as is Marge, the chosen bride, and everyone is scandalized. Unfortunately, in spite of my caution regarding glassware and dominance, my husband and I are not off to a great start. The truth is, we didn't stand a chance in the happily ever after married category. Neither of us has a decent model for marriage. He was clueless, having been raised by a struggling, divorced mother and 7 older siblings. I, on the other hand, grew up in the care of a pair of deeply sensitive, loving but unhappy parents, welded together in eternal matrimony. They were disappointed with life, chronically cranky, and permanently pissed off. With no positive models, neither my husband nor I had a clue about how to be married. Each of us felt neglected and brokenhearted, that our dreams were not being fulfilled by the other. Our sole matrimonial guide had been the Hollywood movies we'd been raised on, in which handsome, disparate couples fall in love, no matter how culturally diverse, to live happily ever after. Like in the classic romantic film, The Philadelphia Story, Jimmy Stewart stars as a rumpled working-class journalist who doesn't know a pickled fork from a polo stick, but found the object of his affection in the fabulously wealthy socialite played by Katharine Hepburn. In spite of how mismatched they seem, there is a glorious romance ensuing. They have no trouble overcoming their differences and finding true love. The enchanted cottage left an indelible impression on me. Dorothy McGuire stars as a lowly cleaning woman who, in spite of her unfortunate homeliness and humble background, marries the war-weary, disfigured aristocrat Robert Young, a man who has abandoned hope. Love and marriage magically transform them both. She becomes a cultural beauty, while he, rendered free of deformity and nihilism, regains his will to live. Through the magic of the cinema, the couple find themselves perfect for each other and destined to live happily ever after. Unlike the movies, there's no Hollywood ending for our union. Nevertheless, our divorce was amicable and long-lasting. I wonder if it's too late to honor our separation with a celebration featuring the smashing of an entire set of dishes. And I'd like to read this poem. This is a poem called Past Peak. Past Peak, my friend announced the end of autumn. My leaves are still orange and red. It's not winter yet. It got cold last night. The plants I brought inside blocked the doors. The pond didn't freeze. And here's a poem about current life. I've been in this room all day, lying on the couch, writing, watching videos, checking emails, eating, gazing into the refrigerator, and gazing outside at the brilliant colors outside the window. I binge-watched the end of a dramatic series about a woman who overcomes adversity, and a TED Talk on procrastination. This is called A Woman of My Age. I'll end with this one. Although his face is less than a foot away from mine, we are safeguarded from intimacy by the hunk of metal and lenses separating us as he flashes a bright light into first one of my eyes and then the other. His instruction, look at my ear, adds a note of frivolity to the experience. At every appointment, I've asked him to explain what he is doing, but I don't understand beyond that he's examining my eyesight and he is chronicling how much my vision is deteriorating. Apparently, so far, not much, because he remarks, "You're doing really well." Nevertheless, I react, demanding, "What do you mean, really well?" He hesitates. "You're doing better than expected for a," and then he hesitates, and then he hesitates again, and then he goes on, "for a woman of your age." As I suspected, my age is the filter through which the information passes. He's having trouble seeing me as an individual. "You won't go blind," he assures me. "It takes a long time." Apparently, informed by statistics, he believes I will die before I lose my sight. I'm not placated. Unfortunately, I inform him, even though I don't particularly care to live longer than my best buy date, there's a good chance I will live a long time. He gives me a patronizing look and adds that there are things we can do. "Let's do them," I urge, as he gives me a follow-up exam in 3 months. Early in the week, my podiatrist asks what I'm doing lately. I've just told her I've had 3 performances coming up in the next 2 weeks, and I've gone back to tap dancing. That's when he warns me to be careful, when she warns me to be careful. She is as alarmed about my dance class as if I told her I was riding through Times Square on a motorcycle in a tutu without a helmet. I insist on knowing why she's warning me. Have her patients had a lot of accidents while they were tap dancing? She goes through a litany of fears: balance, strength. "You could fall down," she says. "I'm pretty strong," I react. She gives me a patronizing smile. "My balance is pretty good," I follow lamely, but I don't tell her when I slipped on the ice twice last winter. I didn't get hurt. What's the point? "And besides," I add, "dancing is strengthening my bones." She hesitates. She denies dancing strengthens bones, then concedes. Well, it is weight-bearing. I'm about to add the neural pathways opening while I'm learning routines, but I don't because she doesn't do neural pathways. She doesn't go higher than the feet and ankles. By the end of the visit, she's cheerfully found a reason to hobble me and insists I wear a surgical shoe, a piece of equipment designed by sadists to hold my foot rigid. But in my case, it doesn't, because it doesn't fit. It causes pain in my hip, and when it causes me to trip, I abandon it. Later that same week, my chiropractor reminds me for some specious reason that I have to be careful because I could fall down and break my hip and die. He repeats it like a mantra. Fall down, break your hip, die. I remember 10 years ago when I was summoned to the emergency room where my dear friend Roberta was lying in pain, having broken her hip from a fall. I drew back the curtain and entered the enclosure to find her weeping. "I'm going to die," she sobs. "I broke my hip." Apparently, she had bought the message, "Break your hip and you'll die." Roberta wasn't even 60 at the time, and she didn't die. And after a long, albeit painful recovery, she's happily alive. I feel I have to protect myself from pronouncements of these dedicated caregivers. Telling me to be careful makes me feel vulnerable. The echo of the chiropractor's warning makes me feel unsteady on my feet. It took me weeks of dance class to stop feeling a little off balance. Consequently, when the eye doctor said, "You're doing very well for a woman of your age," I shot back immediately. I am not a woman of my age. And now we're moving on to speak with Scott Michael Ackerman. Scott is a self-taught artist from upstate New York. Although he's not one for labels, Ackerman is known as an outsider artist because his unconventional and primitive approach to painting rejects the boundaries of traditional culture. Rather than starting with a blank canvas, Ackerman prefers to use found objects excuse me, with rough characters such as old wood, windows, and doors to help inspire him. Also unique to Ackerman's personal style is his playful use of words in his artwork. His paintings are celebrated for being honest, raw, and relatable. Currently living in Kingston, Scott Michael Ackerman resides in an old church that also serves as his studio and gallery space. I give you Scott Ackerman. Hello, Scott.
Hello, Betty.
So if someone were about to see a collection of your work, a piece of your work for the first time ever, what would you say to them?
I would ask them to kind of keep an open mind when looking at my paintings because at first glance they could be very hectic and there's a lot going on, there's a lot of color, and I generally, like when I have a show, I put them close together. But there's a lot going on it's happy paintings, they're fun, I like to play with them a lot. So just kind of take a step back and stick with it for a little bit before you make a judgment on it so quickly.
So hold on to your judgments and take a good look.
Yeah, definitely.
So when did you discover your need or your ability, or both, to create art? Did you create when you were a child?
Yeah, for as long as I can remember, I've been drawing. Used to always play different drawing games with my father and my brother and sister.
I'm sorry, you drew with your father and your brother?
Yeah, we all did. We played different games, like, we would make games up and draw with each other and keep a storyline going. And then after high school, I really started painting more and more. And once I had my first art show, I guess in 2000, I was like, fuck, I enjoy this a lot. Like, not only like painting and what I get out of that, but just the whole setting up the show and meeting people and talking about my work with new people. The whole thing just excited me, and I've loved it since then.
And you still like that process?
I do, yeah. Yes, I get nervous still sometimes going to shows and having to talk to people and explain my work, but I still like it.
So it's a double-edged thing. You love it and you're scared.
Yeah, I feel like I like painting more than I like the showing part lately.
Right. But if you weren't doing the showing part, would that take away from your joy at painting?
It does, yeah, because when I'm at a show and if someone likes my work, or even if they don't like it, like, I really get something out of that. And if I were to sell a work, or if someone just really gives me compliments on my work, that it really makes me want to paint more. I don't know what it is, but it's just like that quick little rush where I'm like, I could do this again. I could do another one that someone else is gonna like. I could do this one that someone else is gonna like, and it just feels good.
It excites you.
Yeah, yeah.
So what were your early pieces like?
My early pieces, I guess the basic imagery was still there. Always like a lot of male and females and different animals and make believe animals and snakes. That was always there, but I feel like I was a little bit more controlled and not as loose. And I've been getting a little better at loosening up more and just letting whatever happens.
So you're more accepting of just having things happen.
I think so, yeah. Like a little bit more confident in my choice of actions and colors and what I'm going to use. I feel like when I first started, I was very particular. Like I needed to do this like this, and it just wouldn't go well if I didn't like the painting.
Did you think there were rules that you've now overcome?
I don't think I've ever followed any rules. Like, I'll put oil on top of acrylic and acrylic on top of oil. I don't think it matters much. I'm sure it does. I'm sure it matters a lot. But
It matters to you.
yeah.
Like.
I just haven't. Yeah, I don't follow too many rules while I'm painting.
And what does a Scott Ackerman work in progress look like?
It looks like an absolute mess. It really does. There's because
Define mess.
well, I guess because I don't know what I'm going to paint when I sit down to paint. So I just start with a blank canvas, and I usually try to get some sort of color on it and just get a feel for what I want to happen. And 20 minutes later, that painting could be completely black, or it's just gone. Doesn't look like anything like it started. And then, so it slowly builds itself and then rapidly gets finished, I feel like.
Do you approach, well, you're saying canvas, but I also understand that you use found objects to
Yeah.
paint.
Yeah.
And where do you find these things that you paint on?
In the garbage,
Oh.
I find a lot of stuff. Sides of the road, and I do a lot of construction work, so I'll get some nice pieces of wood or just plain plywood or cut-offs from a job that I like to take home and make my own frames and use the wood itself to paint on.
And that's more exciting to you than just a plain canvas.
Yeah, it really is. I don't know what it is about a canvas, like just a purchased canvas from the store, already stretched, and it's got that bounce to it. And I'm really rough with my painting, so like I need a hard surface, or I would like a hard surface to paint on. So yeah, I'd much rather prefer wood or glass or something like that.
Do you ever paint on canvas?
I do, yeah, but I'll gesso the canvas and then staple it to a wall first, so it's got a hard back. Yeah, so I treat it like a piece of wood, really, and then I stretch it after the fact.
Right. What kind of materials do you use? You don't just use paint, right?
No, yeah, I use acrylic paint and a lot of oil sticks, spray paint, and pencil. That's about it, though.
And when you approach a work, like a new work, do you know what you're going to put on there, or does it come to you as you start working?
It does come to me as I start working. Yeah, I can't, even if I want to, I have a real hard time with thinking about something I want to paint and then putting that down. I don't know what it is, but I get all flustered, and like if someone asks me to paint something specific for them, I say yes a lot of times, and I'm like, fuck, why did I say yes? I'm gonna ruin this. So yeah.
And do you do it?
Yeah, I do it, and sometimes it comes out right, sometimes it doesn't. But
Right. I have in my life done small sculptures, and I find that when people want something, I try to outguess what it was that they wanted. like what element of the thing they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a hard guess.
Yeah.
It's hard to know
It really is.
what they saw and what they're putting out for me to do. And over time, how has your work changed?
If anything, I think I've started to learn how to take a little bit more time with my paintings. I used to just like start a painting, and no matter if it was this big by a 10-foot painting, like I was going to finish that painting that night. Like I couldn't wait. So I've learned that it's all right to let the paint dry for a little bit and like come back and look at it the next day. Still drives me nuts a little sometimes. Like I still really like to finish it right away, but I've learned that it's totally okay to go back and work on a painting.
Oh, yes.
It's been kind of new for me, but I think it
And
works.
there was a time when you would finish a painting in like one.
Yeah, some nights I would stay up all night and I'd paint a few paintings at the same time. I'd have one over here and one over here and one over here. And
So
I
you
would
work
really-
on more than one at a time?
yeah, I like to work at more than one at a time, which I think works well too, because then as they're in a group, you'll see some of the same colors and maybe some of the same images will hop from one painting to the next. So it's like a small group of a painting.
And how do you know when a painting is done?
I mean, sometimes I just know immediately. Like, it could be very minimalistic, and I just like, okay, that one's done. But sometimes they just really don't. I don't know when they're gonna be finished. Like, there was a painting that I did recently, fucking trying, and I would go back and forth with this painting, which I don't like to do, and I would just look at it and add a little bit more. And then I'd go back upstairs and I'd look at it and add a little bit more. And I just wanted to, I wanted to finish it because now I was at a point where I liked it. So I wanted it done. And I'm looking at this painting and I'm like, I'm trying to finish this thing. Like, why is it not done yet? What's happening? I ended up writing, I'm fucking trying on it. And now it was like a happy reminder that, like, I was trying the whole time. And
That's what
it
you
was
wrote
done.
That's what you wrote on one of these paintings.
Yeah, I did.
right?
Yeah.
Can you tell me, I don't know, I can't see it from here, but there's the one with the two red figures.
Oh, yeah.
The two faces facing each other. Can you tell me something about that?
I believe that was I called it the Burning of Kingston. It was two figures, and when I was doing it, it kind of looked like I don't know, like some old colonial guys with their little hats, and then I just put a bunch of fire underneath it because I think it's funny that how Kingston is all of a sudden it's just blowing up as in the country. I guess Kingston's a hot spot, and that it burnt down in 1777, I believe. Yeah, and so yeah, I thought it was kind of humorous to do a painting called "The Burning of Kingston."
I like the concept. I noticed outside, next to the window, there's a space that says there'll be a painting by you in that space.
Yeah.
How did you decide to do that?
David actually gave me that piece of wood last year, and I told him I'd do a painting on it, and it sat, and I didn't do it. And before the show, I worked on it, and I did it, and I liked the fact that David had wrote on it, this space will soon be a painting by Scott Michael Ackerman, and so I just left that there and painted around it. I think it came out cool.
It certainly caught my eye.
Oh, good.
I found it very interesting. I visualize you doing like decorating the whole outside of the building.
That would be fun.
Speak to David about
I
it.
will.
And in your opinion, what is it about your art that feels so relatable?
I guess my art's relatable because it's playful. It's not, you're not looking at a at a beautiful landscape painted by a master, where you're just in complete awe of how he even painted something that beautiful. Like mine is, it's more playful, and you could, and some of the images you could relate to, and some of what I write on the paintings, you might be able to relate to. So I just think it's way more playful than some other paintings that you might see in a museum, where you're just in shock to look at. Like you could look at them, you could laugh at them, you could play with them a little bit more.
So I'm imagining you like coming home from a construction job, having discovered some really interesting piece of material that you want to paint on. And as you're approaching your house, are you planning on what you're putting on there? Or are you wondering where you're going to put it?
Yeah.
What's that process like?
I guess I do think about what I might want to see on the finished product, but well, like I said, it just doesn't work like that. So I have a lot of ideas of what it's gonna look like, and it never ever looks like what it's gonna look like. But
well, that seems to work for you.
it does, yeah. I think I really go off of that, like screwing up and maybe grabbing the wrong oil stick, and I really like to bounce off those mistakes instead of stress out too much about them, because I have a lot of fun when I paint. I'm not sitting there like, I need to do this and this needs to be over here. I'm very relaxed when I paint. It's maybe too relaxed.
It sounds like mistakes are important to your work.
They are, yeah, very welcome.
Because they inspire you. Right. So what's the oddest thing you've painted on besides the outside of David's building?
What's the oddest thing?
Or an interesting thing?
Interesting thing. I do like to paint on glass. I started painting on old glass window panes and glass doors.
That's really a nice feeling, right?
It really is, yeah. And so I started like to paint on the back side of the glass. So I would flip the door over or window, flip it over, then kind of paint the whole thing in reverse. So, because when you flip it back over, you're gonna see the first thing you painted in building on. So it's really interesting to do like that, and I would try to not look at it, not flip it over until it was completely done. And then when you do, everything you thought was on the left side is on the right side, and it's really fun to paint on glass like that, because there's kind of no going back. You can't go back in and scratch something out, because that's on first on the glass.
Right, yes.
So that's always fun.
And what's the biggest piece of glass you've painted on?
I guess just like maybe a 3 by 6, 7 foot glass pane. Yeah, I have one at the house that it was painted on the back side, and it was a double pane glass, and I was moving it, and the front pane just smashed in my hands, and I was so upset. And then I realized that the whole entire painting was painted on the back side, so it was totally fine.
So it was still there.
Yeah, it was good.
Sounds like the painting angels are looking out for you.
Yeah.
And do you have plans for the future? Do you just going to keep painting along and see what happens?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to keep doing what I'm doing, but show more, like internationally. I think that would be great.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and just keep doing what I'm doing, and keep having fun doing what I'm doing. That's the main thing. Painting makes me feel good. It makes me happy. So I just want to keep doing that for as long as I could.
Did you grow up in Kingston?
Yeah, pretty much. Since I was about 14 years old, 13. Before that, I lived in Jersey. But yeah, Kingston's where I've called home for a long time now.
So you moved here with your family when you were a young person?
Yeah.
Yes. And Kingston's really growing. It's growing and changing. I actually said to someone the other day, it's very exciting what's happening to Kingston right now, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to like it when they're done.
Yeah. It's happening quick too. It
It's
seems
happening
just, like,
quick.
every day.
Every time you look around, something else is happening,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
And I have a friend who moved to uptown Kingston from Westchester, and she bought a house, and she said she was so psyched to buy a house in Kingston, because this was 10 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And she said it was just great because there were so many cheap restaurants, inexpensive restaurants. And that's no longer true.
No, it's not.
But she loves Kingston, and I do too. I don't live here, but I really like it here. And I like this space, this green kill space, which is so good for artists.
It really is.
Yes.
It's the nicest gallery around, I think. I love it.
So I don't have any more questions. Do you have any more answers? Or maybe you have questions.
No, I think that was great. I was really nervous.
You are?
You're amazing. Yeah.
Oh,
You just led me right through it. I felt very comfortable.
well, I'm delighted. So I guess, unless you have something to add,
No, I think I'm good.
I'm going to move on to Dorothea. Dorothea Osborn is a visual artist from a minuscule rural town in upstate New York. She's currently living and working just outside of Albany, New York, in an area called Trollsville, under a bridge and next to a creek. Dorothea's recent body of work ranges from hybrid pieces using oils, mixed media, and sculptural materials. She generally commences a piece by using imagery from life, a memory of everyday experiences, while also incorporating themes of spirituality, dichotomies, time, and the Anthropocene. Consequently, her work blurs the boundaries of representation and abstraction. So tell me what that means, Dorothy.
Which part do you want me
part-
to discuss first?
The blurs the boundaries part.
Oh, you're going backwards.
Oh, I am?
That's okay. We'll talk about that first. Now, let's talk about my background first. Because
Okay.
I know that David has images up in order.
Oh, that's right. Okay. I'm sorry, I jumped around.
That's okay. And so my background is pretty diverse. I grew up in the country of a population of about 1,000 people in the town of South Bethlehem.
Is
And
that upstate New York?
that's in upstate New York, yes, outside of Albany. I'm from a family of 7, and I'm the oldest of 7. A lot of my influences, I think, derive, in addition to other things from my past, but from my childhood being out in the country. And I can give you an example of a funny experience. As a child, my friend and I went hiking out past the church and behind the church on this path, and we took my little brother, and we found a carcass, an animal carcass. So we had my little brother drag it back to our house and put it in a paper bag for us. My friend and I thought it would be very educational to bring it to school and show our 7th grade biology teacher. So in school, we went and dumped it on the counter in front of her and said, "This is going to be our science experiment." And her eyes were like, "Okay, let this decompose outside for a little bit, ladies. We'll get back to this."
Oh, my God. Was it smelly?
No, not that I recall anyway. So anyway, we were outside many, many days when I was growing up, either by choice or not, from my parents. And I remember taking my little sister around in the neighborhood, holding her by her hand when she was like 3 years old. And, she wanting to run down the street ahead of us, and us older siblings chasing after them and so forth. And it was just a a really kind of idyllic childhood, growing up in the country and finding rabbits and toads and carcasses. And from there, I decided I wanted to go to art school. So I went to Junior College of Albany for 2 years, and then transferred to Buffalo for my undergraduate, and then spent a semester abroad and traveled throughout Europe for 6 months. And when I came back, I realized I needed a job to pay back all these student loans, so I switched my major my senior year in college. So with a lot of work and dedication, I was awarded 2 degrees, one in art education and one in fine arts. And then I proceeded to work after I graduated, and then decided I really want to further my education in fine arts. So then I went back to school part-time to the University at New Paltz for my MFA, and did that part-time for about 6 years, I think it was. And it was unprecedented that they would allow somebody to do that, but I think the professors saw my dedication and drive and awarded me the opportunity to do that. And then the last semester, my mentor said to me, you really ought to be on campus full-time just to get the real experience of doing this full-time. And that was the best experience I had in my education.
The best experience.
Yeah, during my education, because it was like, this is what it feels like to be a real artist, just to be in it every day, living it, breathing it, and producing in the studio full-time.
And rubbing elbows with other artists.
Yeah, and the discourse was just, phenomenal, the intellectual discourse, and it was just great to learn what your path is and to really get your sense of style and make your artistic voice stronger. It was just a wonderful experience.
Do you remember when you first realized you were an artist? Were you a child at that time?
That's an interesting question, Betty. Yeah. It's been said in my family that my parents knew I was going to be an artist even before I was out of the crib.
Ooh.
So, yeah, one morning, I suppose my parents, one of them, had walked in and said, oh, well, looks like you're an artist, but you also need a bath. And then I also recall one of the very few childhood memories I have is in art. In kindergarten, I remember painting at an easel, and just that feeling of being involved in the paint strokes and putting red on the canvas and just painting on this easel. Probably wasn't a canvas, probably paper taped to an easel or something. Mm-hmm. And then I remember in 3rd grade as well, sitting in the cafeteria at these long tables, and the art teacher coming up to me and having a conversation with me about the artwork I was doing. I don't remember what the conversation was about, but I remember this being a baseline drawing with all these overlapping figures, probably the 9 people in my family. So yeah, it's always been influential in my life. It's been always present. It's always been a part of my life.
So, and you taught art while you were in school until that year when you spent the whole time on campus?
On campus?
Yes.
No, I didn't teach when I was doing my MFA.
Uh-huh.
I taught in public schools, and I taught in New Paltz after I had graduated, undergrad and graduate painting courses for 2 summers when I already had graduated from my MFA. And I've taught at Hudson Valley Ghost Ranch, New Mexico, and various other institutions.
So there's a question here that I think you may have answered already, is how have you developed your career?
Yeah, I sort of already answered that through hard work, commitment, dedication, and overcoming some difficult choices. And you think you have to make some difficult choices when you want to have a career in art.
Yeah.
You have, with a thoughtful approach, you give yourself some options, and then you have to make some decisions on that approach, what you're going to take, what steps you're going to take to further your career.
Were you ever discouraged?
Oh, absolutely. I think everybody is discouraged at one time or another. For example, when I came back from Europe, completely broke, and being from a low socioeconomic family, I didn't have the gifts of funds to fund my education, so I was funding it on my own. And so when I came back from Europe, I had to make a really hard decision, like, do I continue this path in fine art, or do I switch my major from my last year and take 21 credits for 2 semesters each? And so that's the course of action I did. So, but it was a gift in hindsight, because I was able to achieve 2 different degrees in 1 year, but it was a lot of hard work.
It sounds hard. Wow. Does your work comment on current social or political issues?
Right now, it does. I've been really honing in the past year on ecofeminism and the subjugation of nature and people at risk. So it also will lead into the next question. My materials and processes have a lot to do with that. So I've been working a lot with vintage women's clothing,
Ooh, like what?
dresses, underwear, girdles.
And how do you use them? Use them in a painting?
Yeah, I've been using them as the substrate, and then I deconstruct them, and I reconstruct them in different formats. The other materials I use are things that are man-made, like plastic flowers and other man-made materials, especially plastics, and embed them into the canvases and substrates, not canvas, but the substrates. Usually it's clothing. The one piece for example, I was working on today is produced on a shower curtain and a bed sheet. So it's quite sizable, and it's got these nylon plastic flowers in it. It's got lace in it from vintage clothing. It's got all kinds of things embedded and sewn in it.
So how big is that? That sounds big.
That particular piece is about 5 by 6, maybe. I haven't measured it yet. I usually will measure them at the end, because I'm adding so many things to it. They get larger as they go on.
So unlike Scott, you don't feel you have to finish in one day.
No, they're rarely finished in one day.
It sounds like it. And do you work on more than one piece at a time?
Absolutely. When David came to my studio for a studio visit a couple of weeks back, he walked in and he goes, "Wow, you're prolific." Because they're just all over. It's like so crowded, and they're just everywhere, these paintings. So, yeah, they're...
And what are significant experiences which have affected your work?
I would say one of the most significant experiences was, and has been, and will continue to be, visits to New Mexico. For some reason, I'm drawn to New Mexico, and every time I go there, there's something new to be found and discovered. The light, the space is just extraordinary there, no matter what time of year you go. The last time I was there was last April, and a friend and I were driving from Albuquerque up to Ghost Ranch because I was just so excited to show her Ghost Ranch. And we drove up to Santa Fe, and it began flurrying up there, and it was already 80 degrees in Albuquerque. So it was, wait a minute, we're going to Santa Fe and it's flurrying, it's snowing here. So I was like, come on, let's go. We're gonna go up to Ghost Ranch. And we get up to Ghost Ranch and it's like a blizzard. So
it's 80 degrees when you left and snowing when you got there? Is that
it was 80 degrees in Albuquerque, and then up to Santa Fe, because you have to drive north. And when we got to Santa Fe, it was flurrying. Then we had to go northwest a bit more, about an hour more, and it was like this snowstorm. Like, it was incredible. So my friend was terrified, and she's like, there's no way, no, let's go back. I'm like, yeah, that's probably the best idea, is to turn around and go back.
And was that something you were able to use in your work, that experience?
Probably the essence of it, yeah. Not the whole, not like representationally, but the essence of the experience of driving through that many layers of time and weather
And climate.
systems, yeah, in one day.
In one day, right. So here's the question that I've been waiting for the answer. Tell me about Trollsville.
Oh, Trollsville. Trollsville is a not so lovingly name for the place I live. The official name is Normansville, and it's in the town of Delmar. But you have to drive down this S-shaped hill that goes down to a little tiny village of 2 streets. Both of them are dead end. There's about 15 houses on both streets. No, together, on both streets together. So they call it Trollsville because it's down underneath a bridge. So you have to drive down this hill, but it's underneath the bridge that crosses over the creek. Normansville is named Normansville because there's Normansville Creek right there by these 2 roads. So I'm going to, being a writer, Betty, you're going to find this interesting.
I'm coming over.
This is on a yellow brick road.
Ooh.
Okay, so it's covered over with asphalt at this point, but you can still find the yellow bricks in certain places. It's been said that Edgar Allan Poe had stayed in the hotel that is at the end of the street. It's not a hotel any further. It's a big brick building that somebody owns and broke it up into apartments. So it's been said that he had stayed at this place, which was a hotel, and during his stay there, he had alluded to, in one of his writings, I don't know Edgar Allan Poe's writings that well, but he had alluded to this yellow brick road in his writings. Consequently, that's where the writers of The Wizard of Oz got their idea, because they were privy to Edgar Allan Poe's work.
Ooh, what a good story. Yeah, I like that.
So that's my story for Trollsville.
So I've enjoyed so much speaking to you, Dorothea, and to you, Scott.
Thank you, Betty.
Yes, thank
And
you.
I really like your work, really enjoy looking at it. So we do these events, these live stream events here at Greenkill every now and then, as often as we can. And next month, Words Carry Us, which is the name of this series, will feature how do you say that word? Margarita Mayendorf. It writes memoir. She's a local author, and we know her as Morka. Readers of Marka's memoir, DP, Displaced Person, will be delighted by her new collection of essays, chronicling her ongoing war against injustice. Her writing is loving as well as feisty and funny. On January 17th, 2021, the first time I've said that, we will be honored to present Marka and the recently released book, Flipping the Bird. So thank you to David Schell and Greenkill, an art and performance space that fosters and supports diverse, quality, multidisciplinary art and community in Kingston, New York. Thanks also to Scott Michael Ackerman and Dorothea Osborn, and thanks to you, our viewers. Good night.